Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to New Life Family Services Gala. We are so thankful you are here with us tonight, both our in-person guests, and we also want to welcome our live streaming audience. Thank you for joining us wherever you are tuning in from. We're so happy that you are here. For those who don't know me, my name is Tammy Coker, and I'm the Executive Director of New Life Family Services. Now, 2020 has been a year, has it not? Yes, it has. And I'm trying to not take this too personally, but I turned 50 on March 8th. And then basically everything went downhill from there. I don't know what happened, but as I was thinking about the chaos that's ensued over the last several months, and I was thinking about like the divisiveness in our country on everything, every single topic, right? I was thinking, what if there was just one thing that could unite all of us? One thing that we could all rally around. And then it came to me. Memes. Because in 2020, the memes have been awesome. So I want to share my favorites with you. Can you see the? You can't see that. Can you see it? Oh, there we go. Somebody hurry up and shout Jumanji, right? We do not need any more levels. And then the next one is our coin shortage. It's really because everybody has been wishing 2020 away. And then there's my personal favorite. Whenever I get asked to do something I don't want to do, I just say, in a pandemic, and it's worked pretty well so far. I just want to clarify that will not work tonight when we ask you for money. Sorry. But seriously, it has been a really challenging year, and we know that. And so we are just truly grateful that you are here with us tonight. I wanted to take a few minutes on the front end of our evening. For those of you who are new to New Life and maybe don't know as much about us, I wanted to just share with you kind of who we are as an organization from a high level. New Life has been around since 1973, offering help and hope to those facing an unplanned pregnancy. We do that through three primary service areas. One is our New Life Adoptions Program. We are a full-service licensed adoption agency serving both birth families and adoptive families. And you're going to get to hear from a birth mom who's going to share her adoption story in just a few minutes. And then secondly are our First Care Pregnancy Centers. Those are our storefront locations where we serve those facing unplanned pregnancies. We have 3 offices in the Twin Cities and 1 in Rochester, and you'll hear a little bit later about a 5th office that we have planned. And this is where we provide pregnancy testing, ultrasounds, decision-making counseling. We have licensed social workers in each of our centers, and we have a huge parenting education program because our hope is not just that women would choose life, but that they would thrive and choose abundant life. And so we want to equip our parents to be the best parents that they can be. And then our third program is our Conquerors Abortion Recovery Program for those who have had an abortion and are struggling with that decision. And again, you're going to hear in just a few minutes from Mary, who is with us tonight, and she's going to share about her story as well. So that is who we are, kind of overall in a nutshell. The cost for New Life to serve one woman throughout her entire pregnancy with every single service we provide is $550, or just $46 a month. Every single service we provide can support life. Interestingly, that is the same cost as a first trimester abortion in Minnesota. So that same cost can either give and support life, or it can end life. And so later this evening, you'll have the opportunity to partner us financially, and we encourage you to do that. But know that you are supporting life as you do that. I have a couple ways that you can get involved with us. You can text 22999, any of these keywords, and you can get any of the information. You can stay connected with us. You can get real-time prayer texts, like literally when a client is in our office having an ultrasound and has an abortion scheduled maybe the next day, you can be praying for her wherever you're at because you get a text on your phone. If you haven't been to one of our centers, I encourage you to please sign up for a tour. You will be so blessed when you come and see for yourself where everything happens. And so we want to invite you to do that with us tonight. As I mentioned, our adoption program has been around since 1980, and now we're going to hear from Sophrona via video about her adoption story.
My name is Sophrona, and this is my adoption story. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was 22 years old at the time. I'd actually just been fired from my job. So I was in a spot where I wasn't quite sure what my life was gonna look like in a year, let alone 6 months or 3 months or anything like that. So I didn't know what my life looked like. And I wanted to make sure that the place I was in, if I was going to have a child and bring a child into that world at that point, that I was able to provide for them in an equal or better way than I had as a child, and I just didn't feel equipped to do that at the moment. I chose to go to New Life with my mom and talk to someone about the options of adoption as well as parenting and see what those would look like. Kind of after I decided to start looking at profiles, my parents' best friends reached out to them, and they knew I was pregnant previously, and they had gone through New Life about a year before and adopted one of their sons. So they were someone that they were thinking about the adoption journey again. They just weren't sure where they kind of sat in that. And then when they found out I was pregnant and they found out I was looking at families through New Life, they reached out to my parents and asked if I would consider interviewing them and kind of consider them in that category of potential parents. I sat down with them and had a conversation over coffee, and immediately I knew that I wanted them to be the parents of my child. So I actually told them that same day. I went home and told my mom, and she was like, "Are you sure? Like, think about it for a minute." I go, "Nope, I don't need to think about it. I know right now." Delivery day. That was really exciting. I went in the morning of. My parents drove me to the hospital, and I met Samuel's parents there. And I wanted them to be as much part of the birth experience as they could be, because they had been a part of the entire process. They chose his name. They chose how our family dynamic would look. They had a lot of say in a lot of things because I fully wanted them to have that experience. Samuel is the cutest kid on the planet. He's super cute. He is super outgoing. His adoptive family can definitely tell that he is part of his birth family. They tell me that every time we see him, he has no fear whatsoever. For Samuel, my dreams are that he knows he's loved by everyone in his family, whether it's birth family, adoptive family, the family of Christ, whatever that may look like, that he knows that he's loved and he can succeed, and that he is absolutely God's gift to everyone he comes in contact with, and that he is an amazing product of love and encouragement and exactly where he's supposed to be.
Since 1980, New Life has facilitated 810 adoptions. Isn't that awesome? Amazing. Next, I would like to invite Mary to start making her way up to the stage. So our Conquerors Abortion Recovery Program was one of the first decisions we made during COVID, as we were in the middle of some groups, and so we immediately had to take those groups virtual. And it was actually an incredible blessing. And so we've actually had more groups this year than we had last year because of the ability to go virtual. And so one of our guest speaker tonight is Mary, and she actually went through our first virtual group. So please join me in welcoming Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary, and I would like to share my story with you. I grew up going to church and always knew God was real, but my home life wasn't exactly ideal. Addiction and mental health issues were prevalent, and when I was 8, my father was murdered in a bizarre altercation with a neighbor on Thanksgiving. I have 5 younger siblings and had to grow up pretty fast. With all the chaos going around me, church felt like the place I could finally take a deep breath especially at the church camp I would go to every summer. I felt like I could fully be myself and didn't have to hide my beliefs or feel shame for wanting to talk about God. I remember raising my hands toward heaven and palpably feeling the Holy Spirit while we worshiped. I have always felt a tenderness towards His Spirit and a heart for the disadvantaged. I always saw myself as someone who fought for justice and protected those who couldn't protect themselves, which made my decision even more heartbreaking. As I got older, my faith evolved into a performance. It was more important to me to project a good girl image than to admit my faults and have honest conversations about my own humanity. I had a hard time connecting with people. I kept most things secret to avoid judgment. I was always warm and welcoming, but never discussed my true struggles and vulnerabilities. I wouldn't necessarily date Christian men and started having sex even though I knew it wasn't God's intended design. I found out I was pregnant shortly after I started a new relationship. Waves of shame and fear crashed over me like I had never felt before. I immediately panicked, and my only thought was to cover it up. I desperately needed it to go away so I could maintain my good girl image. I thought of all the reasons why it wasn't smart to have a child. My boyfriend didn't explicitly say I should get an abortion, but he also said he wasn't ready to be a father. And I didn't want to be a single mother and raise a child in a broken home and struggle financially. I thought the easiest way to make it all go away was to have an abortion. I allowed the lies of the enemy to justify my actions. In my heart of hearts, I knew it was a baby and a life. Even worse, the only certain thing I knew in my life was that I wanted to be a mother. I dreamed about the day when I would be married and have my own family. I never pictured myself in this situation, so every thought I had was motivated by shame and fear. Instead of relying on God's faithfulness to me and what I knew to be true about Him, I chose fear and took the situation into my own hands. I had the procedure and felt a moment of relief that was quickly overshadowed by immense guilt and regret. It felt like an out-of-body experience where I had completely separated from the reality of what was going on. But little by little, the reality began to seep out. I then dedicated every waking moment to rationalizing and justifying what I had done. I dove into perfectionism and doing everything I could to make it seem like I had it all together, and my soul was exhausted. I couldn't escape the torment. The places that used to be fulfilling were ineffective. I couldn't go to church without weeping. I couldn't volunteer with the children's program because it reminded me of the grief I had for my own child. Joining a small group felt inauthentic because of the secret I was keeping. I couldn't be around my niece and nephew and avoided family gatherings. I had completely isolated myself and was constantly tortured by my past. The Bible says the wages of sin is death, and so many nights I begged and pleaded with God to let me fall asleep and not wake up to end my misery. I had become the biggest hypocrite and felt like there was no hope for my future. Not only had I screwed up the picture-perfect plan I had for my life, I was certainly disqualified as a Christian because of what I had done. I really thought my life was over and I wanted to end it. I was dangerously depressed and knew I needed outside help. I can now see that it wasn't a coincidence I found Conquerors while looking for a job on a nonprofit job board. I called that week to get started in the program, but didn't actually join a group until a year later because I wasn't ready to trade my pain for freedom and forgiveness because the pain was all I knew. When I did join a group, it was terrifying and extremely uncomfortable to face my own depravity. But I also found the support I was desperately seeking to talk openly about my trauma. Because of Conquerors, I feel like I finally know the depth of God's mercy and grace for me. Not just when I was pretending everything was fine, but in my darkest, most selfish moments. When I made the mistake of choosing fear and lies instead of what I knew to be true, Jesus still died for me and still pursues me. I am not beyond God's redemption like I once believed. I found so much freedom in finally confessing my sins and receiving God's forgiveness. Things I had heard all my life but never thought I needed. Going through Conquerors helped me to receive these gifts and not only begin to heal my pain, but also heal the pain of the people around me that were affected by my abortion. While I now know abortion is not the unforgivable sin, I still grieve for what my life would have been like. There is still sadness when I see young children or an expectant mother excitedly announcing her pregnancy on social media. I know my child is in heaven, but I will never forget the heartache of my decision. I have to continually fight the condemnation and shame that wants me to believe I am worthless because of my past. I have to declare the truth of Isaiah 44:22 that says, "O Israel, you will not be forgotten by me. I have blotted out your transgressions like a cloud and your sins like mist. Return to me, for I have redeemed you." I want to fight the temptation to be quiet about my story because I believe that's what the enemy wants, to keep us enslaved. Conquerors help me to truly understand the relentless pursuit and tenderness of God after my abortion. I know there are other women who are hurting because of abortion, and I want them to know they are not irredeemable or forgotten by God. Because of the programs like Conquerors, we can be free from the anguish of our sin and encounter God's unfailing love. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Thank you. I'm not so sure I can talk right now. Thank you, Mary. You know, when I met Mary a couple of weeks ago and she talked about the desire to share tonight, we gave her a lot of outs because we knew the story was still very fresh. And healing is a journey, right? But she was so confident that she wanted to share because more than anything, she wants God to use her story for good. And she knows that people need to hear the truth about abortion. People need to hear the truth about the healing that can happen afterwards. So Mary, I know that God is going to use this. Thank you for, I can't talk. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Whew, okay, let's shift gears a little bit. So, you know, when a major crisis hits, like COVID, for example, you really have kind of two distinct directions that you can take. One is you can allow yourself to become overwhelmed, which is very normal, or you can also allow all of the extraneous noise to kind of fall by the wayside and become laser focused on your vision and your mission of what God has called you to do. And I remember when things started shutting down in March, I just had this clear image of our organization in my mind. And I saw these three pillars that really make up New Life, very distinct from each other. One is our clients, which is why we do everything we do. Number two is our staff and our volunteers who serve the clients. And thirdly is our donors, you, who really make everything possible. And I just remember thinking, we are gonna have to be really intentional with all three of these things if at the end of this, assuming there's an end somewhere in sight, if at the end of this we're still gonna have a ministry standing. And I remember it being kind of a heavy burden because those three pillars are really interdependent on one another, right? if one of them falls, they all fall. If people stop giving, we can't have staff and we can't serve clients. But if clients don't come to us, we don't need staff and nobody will give. And if we don't care for our staff in the midst of all of this, we won't be able to serve the clients that come in. And so I just remember thinking through that. But also as a Christian ministry, the beautiful thing is our foundation is, of course, Christ as a ministry. And so even though they're all interdependent, our faith and our hope comes from him. And so as we were navigating, trying to make decisions that we really didn't know how to navigate, we really had to dig deep. And much like our theme for tonight, we were rooted in hope. So New Life has been open throughout COVID, other than a 2-week time where we had to obtain the proper PPE. And while we limited some of our services for a while, we've actually served more than 3,000 client visits since March 1st. Isn't that incredible? And so praise God for that. You know, the day before everything shut down, we had a woman come into one of our offices, and she was in great distress. She was terrified, actually. And as she began meeting with one of our staff, she shared and actually opened up that she was the victim of sex trafficking. Now, that is not something people tend to share very openly. But not only did she share that, she also shared that she wanted help. She actually wanted to get out of it. And that also is unusual. And so our staff member met with her for more than 2 hours. She did everything she could because all of the shelters were full, and we needed a place to send her that night. And she was relentless in her pursuit of advocating for this client. And we got her a bed that night in a shelter, and then she actually got into a longer-term program for victims of sex trafficking. The very next day, everything shut down. Isn't that God's timing? Amazing timing. And then we had a woman come to us for rental assistance. We do grants for rental assistance, and turns out she was pregnant and she had an abortion scheduled. So as one of our workers talked with her, she said, I want to have an ultrasound, though, the day before my abortion. And so when she came in and she had that ultrasound, she told her worker, she said, it was like the baby was talking to me, and I knew I couldn't go through with it. Amazing. And then we have our long-term clients in our Every Family program. And you know, there are clients that we connect with so well and so easily. And then there's other clients that, you know, they come regularly, but the connection is a little bit harder. And sometimes you wonder, like, how much of an impact you're actually making. Well, we just had one of those clients come back in last week, and she brought her 1-year-old in, and she said, I just want you guys to know I'm a completely different person than I was when I was pregnant and when I first started coming. She said, and that is because of you. She said, you guys helped me through some really hard situations and really hard decisions. It wasn't just the stuff that I got. You really were there for me, and I want you to know it completely changed my life. Isn't that amazing? And every single time, I want you to know, every single time that we are able to pray with a client, that we are able to have a spiritual discussion, that we do an ultrasound, it literally is because of you. Literally because of you. I have one more client story I want to share with you. During the midst of COVID, Whole Women's Health, which is the second largest abortion clinic in our state, moved from downtown Minneapolis to Bloomington, 7 miles from our Richfield Center. So we are now the closest pregnancy center there to the clinic. And so we immediately adjusted our staffing levels because we wanted to make sure that every time they did abortions in that facility, we would have extra capacity so that if somebody walked in, we could serve them with an ultrasound and with a social worker. And it didn't take long for that to happen. And so we had a woman, she went to the abortion clinic to have an abortion that day, and she met with somebody outside who talked with her about her options, and she actually brought her to our First Care Center. And when she came in, she met with our social worker, and she said, it is just so great to have a place where I can just process all of this without all of the pressure that's coming at me. Like, I just want to talk about this. Nobody has sat down and talked with me about what's happening. And so she didn't have any of the pressure. And then she wanted to have an ultrasound. And when they went into the ultrasound room, they saw the most amazing, beautiful 16-week baby. And she chose life in that moment. Think about that. In the span of 2 hours, she was just moments away from ending her pregnancy to choosing life. And so she continued to come to our center, and she has joined our Every Family program. And every time she came in, she said, "I'm so thankful for you guys. I am so, so thankful you were here." She recently moved out of state to move back home with her family. And she's like, "Is there a place like this out here? Can you help me find somewhere?" And we're going to. Praise God for that. Those ultrasounds are so incredibly impactful. And this year we are celebrating a milestone with our ultrasound. So take a look.
This year at New Life, we are celebrating a special anniversary, 20 years of providing free life-saving ultrasounds. In honor of this special milestone, we want to give you an inside glimpse at this life-changing service.
So the beauty of an ultrasound is that it really makes the connection between the head and the heart. So as humans, a lot of times we're so visual, and when someone's pregnant, they might not feel the baby moving or feel any kicks or really have that deep and intimate connection yet with their child. Ultrasounds bring to life a living, moving, black and white image on the ultrasound screen where we actually get an inside look at a child being fearfully and wonderfully made. Their days are already numbered by the Creator. The God of the universe is knitting and weaving them together in the mother's womb. During an ultrasound, we might see a heartbeat, a tiny little flicker of a baby who's not even a centimeter big, all the way to, by the end of the first trimester, seeing 4 chambers of the baby's heart beating in perfect motion and perfect rhythm. We see somersaults and kicks and flips, stretches. We see babies clap their hands and suck their thumbs, the intricacies of brain and spine development. Even during ultrasounds, we've counted 5 fingers and on each hand and 5 toes with moms and dads. I remember recently we saw a woman come in for an ultrasound, and she had actually been at her abortion appointment when she changed her mind and wanted to come to us for an ultrasound. And so she did want an ultrasound that day, and we were able to show her this beautiful baby that was being formed. And to look over at her face and see the raw emotion and see her heart just melting for her child on the screen was the greatest joy.
It's so rewarding to me to be able to help them make these crucial life decisions very early in their pregnancy. I get to walk with women, such as one college-age woman that came to our center. It was a divine appointment. She initially told me that she was really nervous about being pregnant and was very adamant that she was going to have an abortion. So this woman was able to see ultrasound pictures and see movement on the screen of her baby, and it was just beautiful. She was able to see the bone structure starting to form and the heartbeat, and she was able to connect the reality of what was really going on inside of her, just as described as in Psalm 139, where God is knitting this beautiful child in her womb. And we were able to see that transformation occur where she had come in with fear and left with hope. So she ended up choosing life, and praise God, she was able to tell me as well that she changed her major to become an ultrasound technician after that ultrasound.
It's incredible to think that we've been able to offer this for 20 years. It's almost overwhelming to think about the women and men and families and children who have been profoundly impacted by this service. And what a joy to be able to continue that into the future for years to come. You know, if there's one woman who feels supported in an unexpected pregnancy, if there's one baby who's given the gift of life through the power of an ultrasound and the Lord working on the mother's heart, and if there's one person who trusts in Jesus after hearing the good news of the gospel, we can be assured that it's all worth it.
I just want to say thank you to all of the donors sitting in this room tonight. Without you and your support, we would not be able to provide this life-changing service to these women and their families. Thank you so much. We just would not be able to do this without you.
20 years, and ultrasound continues to be one of the most beautiful tools that we have. And this year, we actually got brand new 3D 4D ultrasound machines thanks to 2 grants from Focus on the Family and the Knights of Columbus in Rochester. So good. 7,228 ultrasounds since 2000. 7,228. Praise God for those lives that have been changed. And now I want to spend the last few minutes that I have with you talking about where we're going next. And that is the Phillips community of Minneapolis. And praise God, when I was here last year when we talked about this project, we had just purchased 2 adjacent properties right on Chicago Avenue near Franklin, busiest bus stop in the state. Since that time, we have demoed both the buildings and we have prepped it for construction. We made it through the City Zoning and Planning Commission. That was a blessing from God during COVID because everything went virtual. So it was a much smoother process. We didn't have any opposition to that at all. We're in the permitting process, and our hope is to begin construction in March. Our plans have expanded just a bit since last year. We actually are now planning to build a 12,600 square foot building that will house our First Care Pregnancy Center alongside the Community Care Clinic of Minnesota, where they are going to provide complete prenatal care to our clients and to the community. They will have family appointments where a single mom can come with 4 kids and they can all be seen at once. And we've also made additional space within our building to partner with other organizations. You know, a lot has happened in South Minneapolis this year. With the civil unrest that happened, our location is just 10 blocks directly north of where George Floyd died. And so this community is hurting. It is devastated in a lot of ways, and we are so grateful that God has called us to move into this location. And so by God's grace, even in the midst of all of the unrest, we have been able to form additional partnerships with churches and nonprofits to link arms with them and to serve the community. And I believe that this new facility is going to truly be a beacon of hope and a beacon of light. We love this community. We are committed to it, and we are rooted in hope for the future. We are so excited. Our project is now a $3.1 million project, and I'm so excited to share with you that we are just $392,000 short of that goal. Isn't that incredible? We have seen such an amazing response. So as we are looking towards the future, we want you to jump on board with us. We are excited about this new project. We want you to partner with us. 2020 is going to go down as a pretty awful year for a lot of people, right? But what I want you to remember is 2020 is also the year that a family received a child through adoption. 2020 is also the year that women will find healing from abortion. 2020 is the year that a woman will see her child on the ultrasound machine for the first time and move from death to life, from the abortion clinic to life. 2020 is the year that many of our clients are going to become moms and dads for the first time. And so I want you to know that all of that, in the midst of all the struggle, is the joy that we can hold on to, and it's literally because of you. These people are your legacy when you give to New Life. And I just want you to know that we are so incredibly grateful for you. With that, I would like to let you know our speaker tonight is Kirk Walden, a former pregnancy center director and author of the book, The Wall. In addition, Kirk is an advancement specialist for Heartbeat International, the world's largest affiliate network of pregnancy help organizations. Kirk is also a humorist and a writer whose perspective on faith and life can be found at kirkwalden.com and the Faith Revolution podcast. In addition, Kirk serves pregnancy help ministries as an encourager, coach, and a confidant, and I know that he does that because he's done that for me personally. Tonight, Kirk brings to us a unique perspective on the future of our ministry and a bigger picture of the powerful impact of pregnancy help ministries, Quietly and effectively, our ministry and others like ours are creating a new culture of life in America, and you're about to find out how. Kirk comes to us from Nashville, Tennessee, where he and his wife Jennifer have 5 children. Let's welcome Kirk to the Twin Cities.
Are we up? There we are. Well, I tell you, that's exciting when I think about the Phillips community and what's going to happen there. And I don't know, I am excited to be here live with people. Is anybody else? Yeah. I have done, we were talking about it at the table, I have been a part of a lot of virtual events, and thank you for those who are watching virtually tonight. But I'll tell you, it's crazy. I have sat in front of my iPhone in my office and recorded all these events, and nobody talks to you. I've just got my dog, a little dachshund, he just stares at me, and so it's good to see real people out here tonight. And I don't know, I'm a little emotional tonight, I think, just about what's going on. Mary, thank you for sharing your story, and it may be that I am getting older. Tammy mentioned she had a big birthday this year, and I did not. I just had another one, but I am now 58 years old, and I have lost control of my emotional faculties. I cry at things I didn't used to cry about. I could sit and go through. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and put my man card up here on the table or the podium or whatever, and just one of the things I pray about is just to be real with everybody when I'm talking. And I just got to tell you, I like Hallmark Christmas movies. And yeah, well, I think what I like about them is that they're so darned unpredictable. I have no idea where they're going to go with these movies. You know, there's a young lady, she's working hotel housekeeping, and who is there that she's taking care of the room of the King of Montserrat. I didn't know Montserrat existed. There are a lot of, Hallmark has introduced me to a lot of countries around England where they speak the King's English and they have 238 loyal subjects or something like that. But she's taking care of the room of the King of Montserrat, and I think something's broken or whatever, and she gets fired. And I think this is a Christmas movie. We can't have sad things happen at these movies. And again, there's a plot twist that comes right after that I wasn't expecting. The king's right-hand man is actually watching all of this take place, and he follows her back to her apartment and says, you know what? He does no background checks needed, nothing like this. And he just says, hey, why don't you fly across the pond and take care of the king's daughter? And so she just takes the job and flies over there, and I thought, wow, that's exciting. And it turns out, and again, talk about plot twist, he is a single dad. And we find out about this about 15 minutes into the movie, and I'm thinking, it takes me another 30 minutes, but then I think, you know what? She and he could be a pair before this movie's over with. I don't know if anybody else that I'm watching with has figured it out, but I'm thinking there's a chance here. Movie starts at 7, and then at about 8:09 p.m., somewhere between 8:08 and 8:10, they are together in the horse barn on the palace grounds, and they look at each other and they lean in close, and I said, there we go. What are they going to do? No, they're not. Nobody kisses in a Hallmark movie at 8:09 p.m. This is where the great kiss fake out happens, where they get really close and then somebody walks in the room and they have to back off, right? That's what happens. So that happens. And then as soon as I think they're going to get together, what happens at about 8:35, well, really 8:36, is that it turns out that he has kind of been promised to marry someone else. Yeah, she is the Princess of Cambria. And now, I didn't know Cambria existed, but in fact, I've got Microsoft Word on my computer. That's a font on my computer, so... She is the princess of a font, And it looks like they're going to get married, and several things happen as we lead up toward the end of the movie that's going to end promptly at 8:59 p.m. And at 8:48, she realizes it's not going to work out. It's a Christmas movie. I'm in tears of sadness. But she's got to leave. And so it's Christmas Eve, and she calls a cab. Cab comes right to the palace. It's very convenient there. And she's going to jump on a plane and go back to New York City, where she's from. Then we go to a commercial break at 8:49. Ray Liotta tells us how Shantix saved his life from smoking. Then at 8:55, we come back, and as she is about to get in that cab, who comes riding up on a white horse? But it's the King of Montserrat. And she, instead of getting in the cab, she jumps on that horse, and it's wonderful because she's out there. It's just like a Minnesota Christmas. She's in short sleeves as the snow comes down. And she hops up on that horse, and at that point, at 8:59 p.m., they kiss. And we realize they're going to live happily ever after, she and the king and the daughter of the king. And my family looks at me. I'll be there with my son-in-law, my daughter, my wife, two more of our kids. We just have a whole bunch of a mess of kids. And so they're all looking at me, and they want to know one thing. Yeah, it's exactly what they want to know. They want to know, why am I crying, or is Daddy going to cry at this one? And sure enough, I'm wiping something away. And I don't know what it is about, well, I think I do. I know they're a little bit cheesy. In fact, I was in Farmville, Virginia a couple of springs ago, and I was speaking there, and a couple came up, and they said, "Hey, Kirk, we love those Hallmark movies too." I told a story somewhat like this, and I said, "Oh, they're great." And she says, "Our son produces Hallmark movies." And I said, "Score. I want to be an extra in a Hallmark movie. That's my dream." And so I asked for his email address, and they gave it to me, and they're very kind to do that. And I got in touch with him, and it turns out, I'm from Nashville, and it turns out he and his wife were thinking about producing a movie in Nashville. And he let me know that and sent me some pictures of stuff he was shooting, so I have a chance. But I may be on the big screen one day doing a Hallmark movie. The plot lines are somewhat, maybe a little predictable from time to time. But I think what I like about these movies is something I want to talk about tonight. Because in these movies, a most unlikely person, right, makes one decision that changes everything in their life, and if we were to follow the plot line further, for generations to come. And I think God has a way of choosing unlikely people and giving them an opportunity to make that one decision that can change generations to come. He just does that. And I know there are a lot of people in this room that you would say, "Oh, I'm an unlikely person. Let me tell you my story," and I'd love to hear them. But I'm the speaker, so not tonight. But no, I'm kidding. I really love to hear people's stories. And I'm an unlikely person. When I was growing up, my dream was to be a pro golfer. When I was 15 years old, I actually told God, because I figured PGA Tour tournaments end on Sunday, and if I was a Christian, God wouldn't want me to be a golfer, because I'd have to play in these golf tournaments on Sunday. And so when my sister, who was a new Christian, gave me a little red New American Standard Bible and asked me to read it, I put it on a shelf, and I said, "God, I don't know if you're there, but if you are, let me tell you something." The arrogance of a 15-year-old boy saying something like this. But I said, "God, I do not want you to be a part of my life. I don't want you close to me. I've got things to do. I'm going to turn pro, and I'm going to turn up, whatever. I'm a professional speaker. Let me get the words out here. I'm going to tear up the PGA Tour. I'm going to make lots of money. I don't need you." A couple of years later, isn't this just like God? He's a God of second and third chances, isn't he? I was in my senior year of high school and realized I'm not going to get that college scholarship to a major school that I'd hoped for. I would turn pro later on. I had a very short professional career. But at this point, I was really hurting and struggling. And I remember laying down one night in my bedroom and beating my fist on the pillow and saying, God, if you're there, you've got to change me. Something's not right. And my sister, who had loved me, my older sister, I do remind her that she's older, but she had loved me, and she invited me on a trip to a beach trip with a bunch of college students in Panama City Beach, Florida. And I remember saying, God, I tell you what, I don't know if I want to go on this beach trip with a bunch of Christians, but I had prayed that he would change me, and I said, God, I'll make a deal with you. I'll make a bet. And the bet was this. I had a golf tournament that same weekend that I was wanting to play in. The entry fee was $15, which will tell you how long ago it was. But I said, God, I tell you what, if you make that beach trip cost the same as the golf tournament, I'll go on the beach trip with a bunch of Christians. Well, she dragged me to a Sunday night service with her college fellowship. And I remember the guy was doing the worship time, and he said, we got the numbers in on the beach trip. It's going to be 2 nights down in Panama City. And I'm thinking, $15, God, beat that. Guy said it's going to be $7.50 a night. It's going to be $15. Lost the bet, had to go, because even if I'm gambling with God, I got to go ahead and go. And I went on that beach trip. I took my little New American Standard red Bible, little paperback, and took it down. I figured these are a bunch of Christians. They probably have fanny packs. They put their Bibles in as they go down the beach. And so I need to show the colors. Woke up on a Saturday morning. It's pouring rain. And I see a couple of guys in their bunks at some retreat center. And a couple of guys, they have their Bibles out. And I think, well, I need to at least look like these guys. And I need to open up my Bible. I don't know where to turn to because I don't have a clue what's in there. And I knew, there's Matthew and Mark, those guys. I didn't even know where they were in the Bible. So I just opened up to page 1, Genesis or whatever it was called. And I just started reading, and the stories leapt out at me. And as they did, I realized that God really wants to be involved in our lives. And so I kept reading. As it was, over the next 40 days, I didn't have some Bible reading plan or whatever, but when I got done, I realized it had been 40 days since I started reading when I finally closed the last chapter of Revelation. And I was changed. I can't tell you I prayed a prayer or anything, but I was just changed, and I wanted to start following Jesus, and so that's what I began doing, and I've been doing that ever since. I was 17 years old at the time. It's been 40 years now. It'll be 41 in the spring, so I'm celebrating 40 years, and I promise you I hadn't been wandering in the wilderness over those 40 years. It's been a joy, but it was that fall, my senior year, was when we went on that trip in high school with the college students, a senior in high school. That fall, I was a freshman in college, and a pastor was talking to our congregation as he prepared us for the 1980 election. Another election year is this month, 40 years ago. And he didn't tell us who to vote for, nor would I tell you who to vote for tonight, but he talked about issues that Christians needed to be concerned with, and one of them was the sanctity of life. And I never thought about it. I didn't know what it was like, what pro-life was or anything like that. But I began to listen, and right there I said, Lord, I think I want to be on the front lines of this. This is where I want to be. An unlikely person who just 3 years earlier had told God, I don't want you to be a part of my life, suddenly was asking God to put him on the front line to be a part of this work. And I did. I got involved in a lot of things. I got involved in politics. I thought that was the way to go. And in Alabama, where I grew up, politics were a blast. I don't know how it is here. We have a great time in Alabama. Every election day, get a bunch of friends and go to the polling place and vote, and jump back in the car and go to another polling place, vote over there, and move around a lot. See your neighbors at each stop. Yeah, you're going to vote. Who are you going to do this time? That's the same one, but no, that's not true. I laugh at my home state, but I love Alabama. And actually, we have rules. We got laws, and well, it's true. Don't laugh. I mean, our law is you have to be dead at least 3 years to vote more than once. So I never. But I got involved in that in public policy. And then when I was 28, 10 years after praying that prayer, the director of a pregnancy center there was leaving to go to a larger pregnancy center. I was in Auburn, Alabama. He was headed to Birmingham. And he said, Kirk, why don't you put your name in? And I said, no, I probably won't, because this isn't really, I want to be on the front line. That's where I want to be. And I want to be in Washington one day or something like that. And he said, just give it a try. And so I put my name in as a possible executive director there. Didn't know anything. I was selling office supplies at the time. I didn't know anything about this work. I thought, well, they give out free diapers and do good things. And importantly, they share Christ with those who come in the door. And I think that's great. But again, I want to do something big. That's 40 years ago. Well, not 40, but 30 years ago. And as I went through the interview process, I realized the front line is here. Because it's here at New Life and at pregnancy centers across the country, and I'll say especially New Life. I want to touch on that in a minute. Where a young lady and a young man maybe with her come in and they're deciding the fate of their child. And if that isn't front line, I don't know what is. And I remember an excitement burned in me. I said, maybe this is where I need to be. And I remember going to that last interview, and just like I prayed upstairs before I came down, just be real with them. If you go to this last interview, be real, be transparent, be who you are. And I remember them asking me the interview questions, the standard ones, like, what is your greatest strength? And I can't tell you what I told them because I don't remember. But then they asked me, what is your greatest weakness? They only asked for one. But I remember trying to be transparent. I gave them two. And I told them, number one, not a public speaker. I said, it's not my thing. I don't like getting up in front of people. I don't think I can do it. But I know that if I'm the director, I have to do well what Tammy did so well just a few minutes ago. I got to do that. And all I can tell you is I'll try. That's all I can do is just try. I said the second thing, and Tammy's going to get nervous in just a minute. I told them I'm just not a fundraiser. Asking people for funds is not my thing. I remember in my Little League baseball days, I would have to sell 15 cans of peanut brittle at $1 a can to raise money for our uniforms. And going to my neighbors and holding out that can, oh, Mrs. Hockman, I don't want to play third base naked this year, so if you could, it was terrible. But I did it one year. The second year, I knew better. I saved my allowance for the entire year. Bought the peanut brittle, no more fundraising for me. So that's what I told them, and it is a pleasure tonight to be publicly speaking at a fundraising event. A reminder that God has a sense of humor, but at the same time, where we are weak, He is strong. Because I will promise you, you're not going to get the most gifted orator you will ever hear. I've already stumbled over my words, and I promise you I'll do so again. But I can tell you this, you're not going to find someone up on this stage that it matters more to than me. Because I really believe what we do tonight and what we're doing here and across this country matters. And if I can bring it home, it really matters here. And I don't just say that. I mean, of course you're supposed to. You do how many events a year, 30, 40, whatever it is. Each event is not just a thing I do. I want to get to know the centers. I've known Tammy for years. And I've always wanted to come here because I go, oh my goodness, they got 4 centers up there. And I just kind of want to see how they operate. And we see each other at conferences and visit for a minute or whatever. And she may email me or something. And so we stay connected. But let me tell you something. There are 2,750 pregnancy centers across this country. There may be 5 who have as many locations trying to have the impact that you have here. Maybe 5 out of those 2,750. That's amazing what you're doing. And not only this, I love the Phillips community idea. And I'm looking at that building and go, I don't care. I'm flying up here. I want to see this one open. I want to see that happen because this is, to me, the Phillips location. Is what Jesus did. He went where the people are. We're not waiting for them to come to us. We're going there, and we're going to go in there and with a full medical facility so people can come and have everything. We're going to be the light of the community there. And I say Tammy, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm part of the bunch. But we're going to be a light for the entire community. They're going to flock to us. And I wasn't going to share this, but I'll tell you the opposite. I was in Philadelphia, And I was speaking for a pregnancy center. They're a great ministry there. But they were on the same block. You may not remember him, but there was an abortion doctor named Kermit Gosnell. And he is now in jail because he had taken the life of, not only through abortion, but of clients who were in his offices. And they're in the same building. Well, it's a building with a lot of different, it's hard to explain, but they are within 100 feet of where his office was. But when they moved into that area, they decided they were going to take that block for Jesus Christ. They have Penn University right across over here, and then they have a very struggling community, urban community on the other side. And they said, we're going to take this for Jesus Christ now that he's gone. But when they went into the minority neighborhood there, they were told, we don't know what we're going to do once he's gone, because he provided a lot of health care for us. Well, here's what we're doing. So they thought, the community thought, I know he's gone, he did some bad things, but he was he was in the middle of that community. They trusted him. Well, here's the deal. We're going in to the Phillips community, and we're going to be that shining light, and we're going to bring the hope of Jesus Christ. And as we do in this community where I think the average income is about $28,000, something like that, they're 40-some% under the poverty line there, we're going to be the first choice. And this is a target for the Planned Parenthoods and abortion centers of this world. We're going to be right where they are. And when you said we needed $392,518 or something like that, and we could wrap this project up, I thought, man, isn't it strange, but wouldn't it be something if tonight we hit that? And I don't know how. We'll talk about that in a minute. But wouldn't it be amazing if with a crowd about half of what we usually have, and I didn't know it was COVID. I thought it was just because I was coming in and half the people decided. But that we would do something like that. I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. Who knows what God will do through us tonight. But God chooses unlikely people like me, gives them an opportunity to make a decision that will change everything. I think about maybe the Samaritan woman. We talk about her a lot. She's somebody we talk about a lot in the pregnancy help community. But I think Jesus went into her village. You know, a good Jew didn't go to Samaria, right? Went around Samaria, because we don't talk to those people. We don't have anything to do with them. They're a different group. They're different from us. Sounds like the U.S. today, right? We're not going to talk to each other. We're going to talk over each other. We're going to talk about each other. And here's a ministry that says we're going in. New Life says we're going in, and we're going to talk. And we're going to listen a lot. And we're going to build bridges. That's what Jesus did. He went upon the Samaritan woman. He says, hey, how about this is Kirk's translation all the way through, just want you to know. But he says, hey, can I get a drink of water? And she goes, how is it that you, being a Jew, would talk to me, a Samaritan? Jesus blows right past that, which he had a gift of doing. You know, if it wasn't important, he didn't spend time on it. But he says, I've got some living water. New Life, bringing living water to Phillips. He says, I've got some living water you don't know about. And she says, hey, I'll take me some of that. And he's, again, my translation, sorry. But he says, go call your husband and have him come here. He kind of knows what's coming. And she says, I don't have a husband. And what does he do? Well, let me tell you something, ma'am. You don't have a husband. What is your problem? Are you in sin? No. He says, you've spoken this truly. The first thing he does is compliment her. And I love that about Jesus. Instead of, well, you know, there's some things we're going to have to deal with here. No. You were honest. I appreciate that, because I know you've had 5 husbands, and the person you're living with now is not your husband. He didn't say we need to sit down and talk about that. None of that. But I love the next line, because she says, sir, I perceive you're a prophet. I guess so. Maybe he's good at that profiting thing. But then he starts to talk a little bit more, and she talks theology with him, and she says, don't you worship over there? He says, look, one of these days that's not going to matter. But then this spark of hope, we talk about rooted in hope tonight, this spark of hope begins to well up in her, and she says, I know that the Messiah is coming. And then for the first time in human history, Jesus says to someone, before he told Peter, now they were thinking about it, I know, before he talked to John about it, Nathaniel, any of these guys, he tells her, I who speak to you am he. First time he tells anybody plainly, I am the Messiah. Chooses this woman, chooses an unlikely person, and offers her an opportunity to make a decision. What does she do with that knowledge? Goes back into her village, and she says, this guy told me all about myself. What if do you think he might be the one, the Messiah? How long have they been waiting? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. She says, do you think he is? And then many in the community, the Samaritan community, begin to follow. And then Jesus decides to stay 2 more days. And when he does, even more follow. And so he took the good news to a group that nobody even wanted to talk to in the Jewish community. That's where he took the good news. And here we are. We're going to be just blocks from where an incident took place that shocked the nation, that caused even more of all of what we've got going on right now. And here's the group that's going to quietly go into that area and say, you know what? We're going to be a light. And we're going to listen, and we're going to talk, and we're going to provide hope, rooted in hope. And as we do, lives will be changed and lives will be saved. You know, we have a ton of spiritual conversations. I got it in my notes. I think it's 900 of them last year. And I think we're going to have those conversations in that community. This is what changes a culture. I think a lot of us are worried, what's going to happen to the culture? Is it just getting worse and worse? And there are those among us, I'm sure, who really believe and say, you know, I think it's just going to get worse and worse. And I just ask this. Who says it has to be that way? Who says it has to get worse? Did God decree that it had to get worse in Minneapolis in the United States? Or is he giving the Christian community an opportunity to reach out and say, you know what, this, instead of seeing this as a disaster, it's kind of like the Apollo 13 movie, which makes me cry a lot. Maybe it's going to be the family of faith's finest hour. We can choose. We can see it as horrendous and all these bad things are happening and it's 2020 and it's only going to slide downhill. Or we can say, this could be our finest hour. When we rise up and we reach out and we say, not on our watch. On our watch, we're going to reach out. On our watch, we're going to love. And on our watch, we're going to see more people begin to follow just like that Samaritan woman did. What if we looked at it that way? And that's kind of why we're here tonight. And I want to thank you for being here tonight. Because there could be other places you could be on a Friday night. You could be home. We've been home a lot, but you could be home. And you decided to get out. And there are those of you watching, and those of you watching, I want to say this. You could have turned this off by now. You could say, we're going to watch the tube. We're going to watch, there's a show we want to watch, or Hallmark movie. But you're watching, and I want to say thank you. Because this could be one of those moments that's a turning point. And I just love the vision. I'm sorry, I can't get over it. I love the vision that you have. No, let's not build a little 3,500 square foot facility. Let's go for 12,000. Let's make it so we can do all of these things for the community. We're not just coming in to have a pregnancy center. We're coming here to enact change in the community and to lift up. This is what God's people do. This is who we are. God's people do. We reach out, we build up, we encourage, we provide hope, and it's rooted in hope. It's what we do. We've always been doing this, and we're going to keep doing it today. And so I want to say thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for being a part of this evening. I was thinking about telling this story, and Tammy mentioned it, but I think about those who come to us who have made a decision that they regret years ago. I was a single dad for 9 years. Married Jennifer. in 2006. She was a pastor's daughter, never been married, no children. I had 3 of my own, 3 teenagers that I brought into our marriage, and she was amazing to them. They were looking for a mom, and she didn't try to be mom, but she ended up becoming mom. Amazing time. 6 months after we were married, we went to Disney World. She was a cancer survivor, overcame ovarian cancer, so we realized that odds were our family was complete. Went to Disney World at Christmas, came back from Disney World January. We have to do a pregnancy test, Jennifer told me. And I'm 44 years old. No, we do not need to do. We did, we found out Josh was on the way. And to be real with you, I'd spoken all over the country from Fairbanks, Alaska to Port St. Lucie, Florida, talking about how children are a gift from the Lord. But when it happened to me, I was upset. I was tired. I'd been a single dad 9 years and raised these from 3 years old to 13 years old. I was just done. From 7 to 17, from 5 to 15. And I was just like, And I remember going to the post office one morning and saying, just thinking to myself, if she miscarries, it'd sure make my life easier. Jesus had a thing to say about what we think in our hearts. But I didn't get condemnation for that. Even though it's the same, I can't see any difference between my thought and what a decision somebody makes years ago that they regret. There's really no difference. But God gave me an opportunity. He said, you tell people children are a gift from the Lord. I'm giving you a gift. Now are you going to live it? And I began to change my thinking. We got excited. Josh was born in August of 2007. Stopped breathing 6 times a night he was born. 2 times they revived him. 4 times he figured it out on his own. He's still breathing today, as far as I know, doing great. But I went into the NICU. They placed him in NICU for a few days, and I went in there, and there was a nurse in there, and she says, Mr. Walden, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I work with Life Affirming Pregnancy Center. She said, can I tell you a story? I said, sure. She said, a woman won the Miss Tennessee pageant years ago. And as she was preparing to go to Atlantic City for the Miss America pageant in a few months, she found out she was with child. And she had a decision to make because you cannot be pregnant, obviously, showing at the Miss America pageant. And so she had a decision to make. She could end the pregnancy, go pursue her dream, or she'd have to give up her crown. She said, you want to know what she did? I said, sure. She said she went into the director's office, put the crown on the desk, and said, this goes to the first runner-up. I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to marry the father. An opportunity to make one decision. It'll change generations. She said, you know why I tell you that story? I said, no. She said, because that's my mom, and I'm the baby. And I said, wow. Taking care of my little gift because of one decision her mom made. It's kind of neat. We took Josh to Disney World 16 months later at Christmas, had a good time. I don't have 4 children, I have 5. It's kind of one of those that's wafting through the audience. Wait a minute. January, Jennifer comes to me. We need to do another of those pregnancy tests. We did. Found out Jake was on the way. You know what's the curious thing about Disney World? The Magic Kingdom, if you will. There's no alone time for husbands and wives at Disney World, but for whatever reason, we came back. We were having these babies, and our oldest figured it out. Joel is a smart kid in the family. He even went to smart people school. I didn't know we had smart people schools. Look, I'm a football fan. That's what I follow. I follow college football. I keep up with it probably too much, but I keep up with it a lot. And look, don't misunderstand. I think it's great that these kids have these classes that they get to go to between games. I think it's good, but I follow the football side and basketball side of colleges and universities, and when he got accepted to college, my lovely bride Jennifer comes to me and she says, "You realize he's been accepted to one of America's top 20 universities in Vanderbilt?" And I said, "Honey, they only won like 2 games last year. They're not in the top 20, I can tell you that much." But he went to smart people school, and we're sitting around dinner one night, and Jake was on the way, number 5, and we're looking at each other, and Jennifer says, "You know, every time we go to Disney, we end up with another baby on the way." And smart boy over there, Joel, says, "You know, is that what we're going to call it now? Going to Disney?" And I said, "No." But children are a gift from the Lord, even Joel. But that's why we're here, because children are a gift from the Lord. And you know, they may be a gift that someone who comes into new life, may be a gift that they parent, may be a gift who they place in the arms of an adoptive couple, but a gift every time. And I want to ask you tonight to stick with me for about 5 minutes. On your table, you've got those big white envelopes, and if you're a table host or just somebody who will grab that envelope inside, look, this is a fundraising event. I don't need to draw this out. Let's walk through this together. Here's the card. They're going to hand it to you. And I'm going to ask you, this is a little weird, Tammy, but I'm going to ask you, don't fill it out right now if you would, okay? Don't fill it out right now. And for those of you online, we've got a plan for you as well. But I'm going to ask you not to fill it out until we've had a chance to pray. Because if you look at the bottom half of that card, you'll see my one-time gift on the left and monthly on the right. And I want to walk through both of those because I'm going to ask you to join Jennifer and myself. She's not with me tonight. She's back in Nashville, and I'll see her tomorrow about lunchtime. But we plan on giving both of these gifts, and I ask that you would join us. If you look at the one-time investment there, it just says I can give by check, I can give by credit card, by donor advised fund, just write it out. But I want you to consider a one-time investment in the ministry. As was said earlier, every dollar tonight goes directly to New Life tomorrow. And our goal tonight that we made when we thought we were going to have 500 people here, the goal is $250,000. And I asked Tammy again, I go, okay, you know, we're going to have half as many people. And then I realized it really doesn't matter because the need is the same. You know, the need isn't based on how many people are in this room or watching online. The need is the same. We need to raise $350,000. Now, it would be great if we raised that $392,000, what is it, 155. That'd be great if we could do that. But what I'm going to ask you to consider is a one-time investment in this ministry that is generous for your family. And it may be $10,000. It may be $25,000. We talked about some things. And I said, what is your marketing budget? Because in a city, in the Twin Cities here, we've got to reach these young ladies. And look, 70% of those who need us are going to find us right here on that phone. And we've got to be where they are, and that takes a lot. It takes a lot of money each month. We even talked about geofencing, which means if this young lady is sitting in an abortion center in the waiting room, we can do geofencing, which means an ad for us would pop up on her Facebook or Instagram feed while she's in there. It's amazing technology, but we can reach people who have already gone to an abortion center. But to do the marketing we need to do, it takes about, right now we're doing about $40,000, but in an area this size, we probably need to do $100,000, to be honest with you. And so when we talk about getting to that $250,000, it means people realizing that if we're going to be the first choice, if they come to us first, their second choice disappears about 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 times. If we want to be first, it takes outreach. And I'm going to ask you, what's generous for you? Maybe it's not $10,000. Maybe it's not $5,000. You're like, I can't go over those 4- and 5-figure checks. Okay, well, what's generous for you? Is it $500? Is it $100? Is it $250? Is it 1,000? Is it 5,000? Is there someone in this room who looks at that $392,000, turns to your spouse and says, honestly, honey, we could take a big chunk out of that tonight? I don't know. So I'm going to ask you in a moment, don't fill anything out now, but in a moment we'll pray about that. And then second, and this may be just as important or even more important, is a monthly investment in New Life. And right now, we've got more than 700 monthly supporters, 710. We call them our life sustainers. And we could take that number. Some of you are in this room, you're thinking about renewing that, and you may add to it tonight. And here's the thing. If you're thinking about adding to your monthly support tonight, and if you're thinking about, hey, you know what, we could be a monthly supporter, and I'm not going to give you an amount, although I will say this, $550 is what Tammy told us will take someone through everything we offer. It's $46 a month. There it is. But on the top of the screen, it says a $50,000 match for everyone who makes a commitment of any amount monthly, any amount. That $50,000 will match your monthly gift, up to $50,000. So if you made, say, a $50 monthly gift, $600 over the next year, it'll be matched. If you add to your monthly support, if you're giving, say, $50 now and say we're going to go to $100, again, $600 will be matched to that $50,000. I'm so thankful that someone stepped out and said, okay, I want to give you a matching gift. You decide how to use it. This is it. What would happen if every one of us in this room said we're going to give a one-time investment in this ministry and a monthly investment? If we do both of those, if every single individual or couple in this room said yes to both of those, we could very well reach $250,000. And now those who are watching online, all you need to do, and if you're in this room and want to do it, you can do it too. To give, you'll text Rooted in Hope to 41444. Rooted in Hope, you see it on the bottom of the screen there, to 41444. And you'll be able to give. Now here's the thing. If you're online, you can give the one-time investment, and then you'll have to go back in and text again to do your monthly investment. But you can join us in both of these investments. And if we do, we might be able to raise that $250,000. If everybody says yes, me included. I didn't come from Nashville to tell you to do something that I'm not excited about doing. It's just not worth it to come if I'm not going to be a part of it. So why don't we do this? Why don't we pray and ask God what He would have us to give? And then we'll make our one-time investment and our monthly investment. We can fold these cards up. If you're writing a check, you can put it in the envelope with it. Again, you can go by credit card, whatever you want to do. Let's ask God what He would have us to do. Father, we thank You for this evening. I thank You for being with us tonight. Thank You for the stories that we got to hear. I thank You for Tammy and her vision and this team's vision, because we know it's not just Tammy. It's an entire staff and board all together with a great vision. And it's really people in this room. I've met some, as you know them, Father, who have done the demo, who are doing the electrical, who are building the building, putting all this together. So I pray that You'll show us what it is You would have us to give to be a part of it for our one-time investment and our monthly investment, that at the end of this evening You would be honored and You would be glorified, because we've chosen to be cheerful givers and be generous in the process. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, this is our opportunity to fill out these cards. We got a few minutes, and then Tammy's going to be up to close us in just a bit. one thing, if you don't have your checkbook or credit card with you tonight, you can fill out those, and if on the one-time investment, just circle it, which means the funds are coming. That's all you got to do.
Sorry, yes. Well, thank you again for coming tonight. We are so grateful that you have chosen to spend your night with us, and we just are so blessed by you. A couple quick announcements before we wrap up. Just a reminder that you can text any of those keywords to 22999, and you can be involved with us. And then, if you've signed up to be a monthly giver or increased your monthly gift, I knew there was one other thing. We have a table out there, and we have a special gift for you, so make sure to stop by the New Life table, and we'll get that to you. And then lastly, we do have our Laugh for Life coming up on Saturday, January, I can't remember my glasses, 30th. And we are currently planning to do an in-person and a virtual event. Currently, our capacity, as you are aware, is 250 people. We are also looking to add a matinee to that day. So we will have two options. We're hoping to find a church kind of on the east side, and then and then at Grace Church is where we always have it. So mark your calendars for that, and who knows where we'll be in 2021, right? Maybe this will all be over, and probably not. But thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.